Hi, everyone. I hope you can hear me. Thank you for being here. My name is Adriana, and I'm here with SuccessWorks. And this is Taste of Success, Marketing, Advertising, and PR. We're really excited to have a group of interesting alumni here to speak with us. Before we get started, please be aware that we'll be recording the first part of this event. Now, I'd like to ask the alumni to introduce themselves and spend a couple of minutes telling us about their career paths. Let's start with Tori Dexter.
Hi, I am Tori Dexter. I was a Letters and Sciences student. I graduated in 2015 with a degree in anthropology, and I currently work for the University of Wisconsin. I work for the Division of Continuing Studies doing advertising and promotion. So I obviously don't work in exactly the field that I graduated with a major in, but I enjoyed talking about how my unconventional major led me to where I am now.
Great. Scott Farrell, if you could tell us about yourself then.
Sure. Hi, everybody. My name is Scott Farrell, and I am the president of Global Corporate Communications at a public relations agency called Golin. We're headquartered in Chicago, but we have 50 offices around the world. And I have the distinct pleasure of being able to work with all of them, and in person, but now virtually more often than not. I am a 1978 graduate, so I've earned this hair quite distinctively. 1978 graduated of the journalism school, majored in journalism, but kind of leaned heavily into the public relations sequence there. Very active in PRSA at Wisconsin, and used that to get an internship in Chicago with another large agency. And since '78, I've been doing public relations agency work, with the exception of about 5 months where I went on the corporate communication side in-house, discovered I didn't like that, and then came back and have been working at Golin now for a number of years. So great to be with you all, and looking forward to chatting with you.
Great, thank you. And Coral Grassler, if you could start off.
Sure. Hi, everyone. My name is Coral. I graduated from Madison in 2011 with a double major in English and Communication Arts. Loved my time there. Moved away to work at a public relations agency for about 3 years up in Minneapolis. But then came back to Madison, and unlike Scott, I found I liked corporate PR. So I'm actually in-house at Fiskars, which is probably best known for the company that makes the orange-handled scissors. But we're in a lot of different categories, and I'm the current public relations and communications manager for all of our North American activations and regions. So I worked at a nonprofit as when I was interning through agency work, of course, that side, and then had a little stint even kind of on retail level for Target corporate, and then like I said, now I'm kind of on the corporate side of things in a consumer goods industry.
Great. So now that we know a little bit about our alumni here, if students would like to ask questions, or if you're uncomfortable saying them, feel free to type into the chat, and one of us I'll read it out loud. But yeah, I'll give everybody a minute to type in some questions. Otherwise, I'll start asking them. Okay. So I guess if we could go in the same order as we did the introductions in, that would be great. So how did you know where to start looking for a job in this field, and what steps you needed to take?
I will start with that one, since I was the first one to introduce myself. I had a slightly unconventional path into the marketing advertising industry. I was very active in the Wisconsin Union Directorate when I was in college, particularly on the music committee. So I began interning for the Orpheum on State Street, doing marketing for them. Kind of your basic digital marketing, helping them have a Facebook presence, and I discovered I really liked it. After I graduated, I wanted to stay in that industry and took a job that was unrelated for a little while just to, make ends meet after college. But then when I had the opportunity to get back into the marketing field, when a job at Madison that I was qualified for showed up, that is kind of how I took the jump back into that field. And I started on a lower level as a marketing assistant. And then my supervisor left, I got her job, and have just sort of climbed the ladder from there. So that's my story.
Mine actually, I want to sort of take you back into my journey into journalism. I was at Wisconsin with my heart set on being a business major. And when I barely passed my 12 weeks calculus test, I realized that business was probably not in my future if I really wanted to be honest with myself. So I retreated back to my room in the old original Og Hall and literally went through the L&S catalog and looked page by page, like what could I do next, right? And art history, no, not so much, and biology, definitely not. But I got to journalism and I realized, I think I'm a good writer. I think I'm a good communicator. And so I went across the street to Vilas, and I sat down with the advisor there, a woman by the name of Heidi Wilde at the time, and she spent an hour with me talking me through what journalism is and what it could be and all the different areas in which you can practice journalism. And we sort of landed on public relations. It's something that might be interesting. And so she sent me down the hall to meet with a professor who had open office hours that day. And he just happened to be the guy who was leading the public relations advertising sequence. And he spent an hour with me and said, you know what, I've got a class in the spring. Why don't you sign up for the class and see how you like it? And I did it and fell in love with the whole idea of public relations as a result of those two interactions. And then from there on out, it was really like staying close to my professor, who was also my advisor, being involved in Public Relations Student Society of America and using them to help me network, to find opportunities for internships and chances to connect with professionals. And that's really the path that got me into my first job. I got an internship between my junior and senior year with a large agency in Chicago. And that was back when they did interns when you were undergrads instead of postgrads. Went back, finished my senior year, and went back to work for that agency again after I graduated. So it was really the great direction and steering that I got from some people in the J School, advisors and professors, who took the time to sort of direct me and help me find my way.
All right, I'll jump in. I think for me, I knew I wanted to do something with writing. It's kind of all I really knew when I came into Madison. So I also took some classes through the J School, found out I might not want to be a true on-the-ground reporter and kind of shifted my focus into literature and, lots of the Shakespeare classes. Those are all my favorite. Let's study Chaucer. I loved all of that. And so when I was looking for internships, I was looking for anything that was going to allow me to write. And so something opened up at the Wisconsin School Music Association, which is a local nonprofit around here. And I loved it. I kind of got to do almost everything within marketing. There was some social media. I was writing for their publication. I was doing event planning. And then there was definitely some media relation that was involved with pitching stories to editors. And I really loved all of it. And then once that ended, I similarly kind of just needed a job, after the internship was over and I had graduated. So I took the closest thing that I could, which was a search engine optimization position. Quickly found out that while that's within marketing, also wasn't necessarily my wheelhouse, but that kind of opened up a few other doors with other locals in the Madison area. So I ended up then going back into writing and public relations, specifically at Fiskars, which is actually where I am currently. But I was there for about a year, loved it, but knew I always wanted to go back home to Minnesota and try my hand at the agency. Definitely knew that I would learn more in a couple years at an agency than I would staying in-house at any kind of corporate role. So loved working at the agency for about 4 years, but then knew I was going to be coming back to Madison. It's where my husband's family is from. We were always going to come back here. So I reached out to contacts who I still had at Fiskars, and they really helped kind of, you know, it's all about connections. I guess I'll go back to that. I think that's been really helpful. That was how I ended up getting my initial job at the agency in Minneapolis. I knew a couple people who worked there. They put in a good word for me. And then same with Fiskars. I had previous relationships that I continued to leverage and make sure that I kept up with while I was gone. And that ultimately ended up helping me come back and get that job where I got to go back into public relations. So it was kind of full circle for me, definitely hopeful with leveraging kind of those people that I had known in the past.
Yeah, I mean, can't speak to that yet, considering I'm only an undergrad, but I assume networking is really important to find your way or find some friends, go out for coffee, do what I hope I'll do in 5 years or so. So if any student ever wants to pop in, ask a question, feel free. It doesn't have to be a me show, even though I think I'm definitely deserving of one. Another query is, what are the greatest rewards and challenges of your job? So what's the most satisfying and what's not really the best, but you just gotta muddle through it?
I can start. I think one of the things that I love about working in advertising specifically is how much it's always changing, especially now. I'm definitely the type of person who really likes something new, a shiny new object. And in advertising these days, there's one of those about every 9 minutes. So it's a very rewarding area to work in if that's something that you find exhilarating and not something that you find annoying. I truly enjoy it. I've loved, helping UW-Madison start doing Snapchat ads for the first time, start doing TikTok ads for the first time, start on new platforms. And I find that to probably be the single most rewarding thing about this field in particular. A challenge, I would say, definitely is it is an area where you do have to make sure that you're extremely detail oriented. And while I consider myself a detail oriented person, sometimes the level that's required can kind of puzzle even me. But it's something that you do get better with practice. It's something that definitely starts to come easier with time. And I think it's something that if you feel like it's a field for you and you struggle with detail orientation, that would be an area I'd really suggest you try and grow.
Let's see, what do I like best about what I do? Agency work is inherently filled with variety, right? So if I look at what I've done already this morning, I've talked to a chemical company about a crisis that they're facing. I've talked to a candy company about an opportunity to help them break into a new market. I've talked to an internet company, a social media company, if you will, about an issue that they're facing in the area of sexual discrimination. So chemicals, candy, the agency business is inherently filled with variety, right? So it's really great that way because you're constantly changing gears, changing fields, right? What can be frustrating for it is the exact same thing, right? Because you are constantly changing, you are multitasking. You've got to change in a moment from counseling a client on a very positive opportunity about a really great new product launch to a client who has a sexual discrimination lawsuit being filed against them. That your mind just kind of pivots really quickly. So that can be a challenge. And the other challenge is in agency business, and I know, Carl, you're probably going to confirm this, right? Might be what you hated about it, is that you have to force yourself to be sort of like a mile wide and an inch deep in terms of knowledge of what you're working on and what you're talking about. You don't have the time to go really, really deep into every client you work on. And if you're a person who's not comfortable with sort of dealing with that dynamic, it's tough to be in the agency world. I'm just wired that way. I love skating on thin ice all the time and not knowing really, really deep on everything. But then you have a chance to go deep when you want to. But what's great is the variety, and what can be a challenge is the variety.
Yeah, that's great. I totally agree with your assessment, Scott, that I'm personally someone who does like to do the deep dive and know everything I can about one company, right? The brand history, the story, the legacy. I love that. Maybe that goes back to my obsession with just literature and old world literature. But I would say the most rewarding thing for me is seeing a story that I've worked on get placement. So with PR, I'm always working to do this kind of brand storytelling or storytelling about a new product, storytelling about a company initiative, whatever the topic might be. It's always about connecting with the right people, the right editors, for the right consumers who are going to find interest in this story, and for us to be able to share the news that we find really valuable. And I love when that all comes to fruition, because it's definitely not a guarantee. You know, PR is all about those relationships and connections, and you know, leveraging your contacts and you know, there's no, it's different than advertising. I'm not paying for a spot. I have to kind of win over an editor and explain to them why it's important for their readers to care about what it is I'm trying to talk to them about. So I find it really challenging and then very rewarding when that actually comes to fruition. I would say the biggest frustration maybe, or a challenge, I think, is that, again, with PR, it can be very difficult to quantify your results, or maybe prove to other people in your company your successes. It can be, you know, it's not as easy as saying I grew sales by 15% last year, right? It's talking about an inherent value, which I've found not everybody understands or wants to invest the time in understanding. You know, like was mentioned, things move so quickly in PR and advertising, and so I think it's hard to keep up with. And if you're not in that industry, if you're a salesperson, business person, you're in HR, you may not have the time or energy to maybe care as much about PR or marketing. And so I find that challenging, because I love everything that I do. I find so much value in it. So it's another challenge to try and find those successes that other people understand, and you can explain this is the inherent value of public relations. But it can sometimes be frustrating. Not everybody always gets it. So